Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Achieving Geekvana. I am Chad, your host, and today, you guessed it, I want to talk about ducks, but not just any duck. I want to talk about Howard the Duck. Howard is probably one of the most sarcastic, politically charged comic characters about capitalism, identity, American culture that probably ever existed. And he's one of the strangest characters Marvel ever created. Strange, not just because he's a talking duck, but because of a situation where a multinational corporation once legally forced the poor duck to put on pants, and he's never been allowed to take them off since. You might think you know this story, but stick around to hear the full story of Howard the Duck and what I think is probably one of the dumbest corporate power moves in pop culture history. The year was 1973. Nixon was president. The Vietnam War was raging, and comic books were having their own cultural revolution. The Comics Code Authority stranglehold was loosening. This really allowed creators to tackle more mature themes and go places they couldn't go before. Into this creative chaos stepped a 26-year-old writer named Steve Gerber. While other writers were crafting tales of web-slinging heroes and cosmic adventures, Gerber was scripting stories for a comic called Adventures into Fear. This featured a swamp monster called Man-Thing. Now, not as popular as DC's Swamp Thing, but Man-Thing's kind of had more existential dread, but fewer plant puns, maybe? I don't know. But anyways, now here's where things get weird. And with Howard the Duck, everything's always weird. In December 1973, Gerber and artist Val Mayork were working on Adventures into Fear 19. They needed a ridiculous, almost absurd element for their sword and sorcery story. So Gerber did what any rational person would do, right? He asked Mayork to draw a talking duck. This was a 3-foot-tall anthropomorphic duck from another dimension, though. A world where ducks evolved to become the dominant species instead of apes. Howard was sarcastic, chain-smoking, and he perpetually annoyed at being trapped in a world he never made. And like most cartoon ducks of the era, Howard wore a shirt and tie, but you got it, no pants. And that last detail, well, that's what almost destroyed poor Howard. What started as a throwaway character became lightning in a bottle. Fan mail poured in, demanding more Howard stories. Marvel, always ready to capitalize on success, gave Howard his own backup features, then his own comic book series in 1976. Howard the Duck wasn't just another superhero comic, it was something entirely different. And Gerber used that absurd premise of a talking duck to deliver some very biting social commentary at the time. He battled everything from vampire cows to space turnips to even a villain literally named Dr. Bong. But it was the existential undertones that really made Howard special. As Gerber himself explained, the main joke was that there was no joke, that life's most serious and most ridiculous moments are often separated by nothing more than perspective. The character became a cult phenomenon. Author Philip K. Dick was a fan. George Lucas was a fan. Matter of fact, George Lucas loved Howard so much, he later produced the infamous 1986 movie, which you may know about. It's back there behind me somewhere. Anyways, the comic was selling well, and Marvel even launched a newspaper strip. However, that's when Disney stepped up and took notice. It was early 1977, and boy, was Disney executives fielding a lot of complaints from their international licensees. Comics featuring this Howard the Duck character are causing confusion in overseas markets. Customers think he's somehow connected to Donald Duck. Well, and really, you know what? I mean, they had a point. I mean, Howard the Duck was an anthropomorphic duck who walked around in a shirt but no pants, a look so associated with Disney's Donald Duck that in Hungary, they actually had a word for it. And I'm going to slaughter how you say this, but it's Donald Kaczaszak, meaning walking around in a shirt but no pants. No, really, that's a real word. But anyways, are we really surprised that Disney's legal team swung into action with the precision of a military operation after that? They sent threatening letters to Marvel citing trademark infringement. The message was, hey, either Howard gets redesigned or we're going to see you in court. And here's where the story really takes a turn that would be funny if it weren't so pathetic. Marvel, despite being a major comic publisher, they just rolled over like a trained seal. They didn't even negotiate. They didn't propose alternative designs. They didn't even try to fight. Marvel simply said, sure, Disney, whatever you want. And Disney wanted, well, they wanted everything, really. In June 1977, John Romita, Marvel's art director and the legendary artist behind the creation of Spider-Man, he issued a memo detailing Disney's demands. Disney artists had created a new model sheet for Howard, completely redesigned the character from scratch. Now, why Marvel didn't do it and why they let Disney, I don't know. But anyways, Howard's head became more oval instead of round. His eyes became smaller and distinctly brown instead of blue. His build became shorter and fatter. Basically, they changed his entire color scheme so that it had a lot more yellow tones. And in a lot of comics, even his feathers were yellow. Anyways, most importantly, though, Howard would wear pants, always. Marvel didn't even pay their own artists to do the redesign, like I said. They simply accepted Disney's version wholesale. Well, Steve Gerber, he was furious. His creation had been hijacked by a corporate giant, and there was nothing he could do about it legally. He was on a work-for-hire contract with Marvel. But creatively, that was a whole nother story. Actually, that's the best part of this pants story. Not long after Disney's legal demands were finalized, Marvel published a story that turned that corporate mandate directly into satire. In December of 1979, Howard the Duck magazine #2 featured a story titled Animal Indecency, written by Bill Mantlo. And this is where the pants stopped being a background detail and became the entire point. In the story, Howard and Beverly are confronted by a moral outrage group called SOOFI, SOOFI, Save Our Offspring from Indecency. And they demanded that animals wear clothes. Now, the situation escalates into a riot over so-called pet decency, forcing Howard and Beverly to flee. He ends up in a clothing store of a man named Wally Sidney, an unmistakable parody, of course, of Walt Disney, who explains that he once created a cartoon character, a mouse who wore clothes, but was laughed out of Hollywood because animals don't wear pants. So instead, he built a clothing empire. Now business is failing, fashion has changed, and Sidney's solution is brutally simple: force all animals to wear clothing, which, of course, he will conveniently sell. Howard has marched through a series of outfits, including designs that deliberately echo Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge's look, before settling on his new look, a full business suit, pants included. Now, it wasn't Gerber writing the story, but it really didn't need to be. Animal Indecency turns Disney's legal mandate basically into open mockery. I think that's brilliant. The pants aren't treated as a creative decision or a character evolution. They're treated exactly as what they were: a corporate mandate imposed from the outside. The suit didn't just change how Howard looked, it made corporate control part of the joke. However, the thing is, the Disney agreement wasn't just about pants. The legal document was lengthy and specific, covering everything from the shape of Howard's build to the color of his feathers. And according to the agreement, Marvel couldn't even create an entirely new design for Howard, even if that design bore no resemblance to Donald Duck whatsoever. They were locked into Disney's version forever. Well, this created a bizarre situation where Marvel artists often simply just ignored the Disney design requirements. Some drew Howard pantsless in later appearances. Others modified his look to be even more appealing. Disney mostly didn't notice or care. After all, they had bigger fish to fry. But the agreement remained legally binding, creating ongoing tension between creative teams and corporate oversight. So Steve Gerber never really forgot what Disney and Marvel had done to his creation. And in the 2000s, when he returned to write the Howard the Duck comic for Marvel's Max line, which the Max line was Marvel's mature reader line at the time, he found a creative way around the Disney restrictions. Instead of drawing Howard as a duck for most of the series, Gerber had the character transformed into other animals, primarily a mouse that looked suspiciously like Mickey Mouse. It was Gerber's final screw you to Disney. published right under their noses. When Marvel executives discovered the strict Disney agreement was still in effect and they threatened to cancel the series, well, Gerber was ready. He had gotten his creative revenge, and Howard kind of faded back into obscurity for years. Okay, now this is where cosmic irony kicks in. In 2009, 32 years after Disney forced Marvel to put pants on Howard the Duck, Disney bought Marvel Entertainment for $4.05 billion. And suddenly, Disney owned Howard. The same character they'd once threatened to sue over was now their own intellectual property. Mickey Mouse and Howard the Duck were corporate cousins. So now Disney could legally change Howard back to his original pantsless design if they wanted to. They own both characters. They could have Donald and Howard team up in a buddy comedy. Hint, hint, we need that, and we need a lot of that, Marvel. Anyways, they could completely redesign Howard to look however they pleased, really. But they haven't, so Howard remains in his Disney-mandated pants, living a reminder of a corporate legal battle that really ultimately meant nothing at all. Since Disney's acquisition of Marvel, Howard has become a reoccurring Easter egg in some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. He had his first appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy films. Later, he cameoed in Avengers Endgame. And the best part was he had an episode of What If where he married Darcy Lewis and they had a kid together. He did all these things all the while, still wearing those damn pants. Over the years, various people have also pitched Howard the Duck movies and TV shows to Marvel Studios. Leah Thompson, who starred in that infamous 1986 film, she spent years developing a pitch with the modern Howard the Duck comics writer Chip Zdarsky and Joe Quinones. Marvel's response was that they loved the pitch, but really had no plans for Howard project and might call her back someday. And so this story isn't really about a duck in pants. It's more about a complex relationship between creativity and corporate ownership in the entertainment industry. This is a topic I'm going to be talking a lot more about on this channel. So if you're interested, stick around, hit that subscribe. Anyway, Steve Gerber had created Howard as a work-for-hire contract. This meant Marvel owned the character from day one, but Gerber poured his heart and soul into those stories. He used Howard as a vehicle for existential philosophy and social commentary, and he did it like no other. When Disney forced the changes to his creation, Gerber felt violated in a way that went beyond mere professional disagreement. Today, Howard the Duck remains a cult favorite character. He's beloved by fans who appreciate his unique blend of absurdity and wisdom. His pants have become part of his iconic look, not because it serves the story, but because of a corporate legal maneuvering from nearly 50 years ago. I mean, the character represents something, though, more important in pulp culture, and that's the power of creators like Steve Gerber to find ways around corporate restrictions through sheer creative stubbornness. Every time Howard appeared pantsless in later comics, it was a small act of rebellion against Disney's legal bullying. So yeah, those pants, well, they represent one of the strangest legal battles in entertainment history. I mean, they're a symbol of corporate power, creative resistance, and in bizarre ways intellectual property law can really shape fictional characters. Disney went to war over a duck's pants, and, well, they won. And then they bought the company they'd fought and inherited the duck anyway. Howard the Duck is still really trapped in a world he never made, but now that world includes being owned by the House of the Mouse. And you know what Howard would probably say about that cosmic joke and irony? Probably something that I probably can't say in this video or even put in print. But it'd be followed by a long drawl on a cigar and blowing smoke at the camera. Because in the end, just some things never change. Howard is still sarcastic, still smoking, still wearing those legally mandated pants. So in the end, to me, the tragedy here is what happens when creativity runs headfirst into corporate ownership. When something personal, weird, and honest that gets flattened into something legally safe. I mean, that's what I think. However, I'm curious what you think. Are Howard's pants a symbol of the struggle between creativity and corporate overreach? Or is it really just about pants? Let me know in the comments below. I genuinely love to read your takes. And if you enjoyed this kind of deep dive into the strange corners of geek culture, hit that like button. It really does help out the channel, and consider subscribing for more thoughtful discussion, honest criticism, and stories that don't always get told the loudest. And thanks for spending some time with me today. And remember, my friends, pants should be optional for your animals. As always, stay geeky, my friends. Stay geeky. I'll see you all next time. Later.